comparing to conditions of Polish companies operating in the LNG market is quite a big company. And what's important, we have infrastructure and license for trading of gas fuels. We are owners of both the gas grid and other infrastructure, so we've been dealing directly with gas fuels. We are not a DPA company. The numbers you can see on the screen shows clearly that we are solid big partners, more than 900,000 megawatt hours, more than 8,000 of consumers. We are owners of 21 regasification stations across whole Poland, and we have 720 kilometers of gas network and connectors. We have also a transport company specializing in LNG transport, so we have all logistical support in single hand. We have 18 road tankers and 16 road tractors, and we are switching to use LNG as fuel in our trucks. In a moment, we will be, let's say, a living example of using of LNG in transport in Poland. Within our investment activity, we have also provide electricity from cogeneration installations. Currently, we see that this is a trend that's becoming more and more popular. We see that this market has been growing. Currently, we either provide power, or in a moment we will start to provide power at 29 megawatts of installed power from cogeneration. Recently, we have introduced to the market a smart gas concept. This is a concept of smart power for our customers. We are able to cover all energy-related needs of our customers using this smart gas installation. From a single installation, we can provide heat, electric power, and also for cogeneration purposes. This smart drive concept is actually a group of products, smart cars and smart drive. This is a concept consisting in adjusting the size of the LNG regasification stations to real needs of the customers. Usually, due to investment costs, the regasification stations were built for the largest customers who were the largest consumers of gas, and our solution provide the supplies of gas even for small consumers. So we are able to scale down or up the installation according to the needs of our customers, and in the same time we are able to offer gas at an attractive price. And we are able to mix these two products, smart gas that's dedicated mainly for industry, and smart drive that's designed mainly for the transport purposes. But within our model of sales and within our technical capabilities, we are able to develop such a smart gas installation by adding some additional functionalities, for example, filling with CNG and LNG driven trucks. And actually we are the only company who's able to install such, to offer such small installations, because we have a network of big installations, and due to this we have a logistic competitive edge, not available to other companies operating in the market, because we have our own fleet of road tankers. At the previous Polish LNG platform conference, I was focusing on smart drive, But today I'd like to focus more on the smart gas product, especially on how it's used in the cogeneration area. Recently, we see a very rapid development of the cogeneration market, and for this solution, smart gas is an ideal form of energy supply. I believe that all participants of this conference know what does it mean cogeneration. Cogeneration is, just to remind you, an associated or combined generation of electricity and heat. The most popular form of cogeneration is use of gas engine running on natural gas. It's driving electric generator, and the waste heat of exhaust gases is used to generate heat for heating purposes. And due to use of LNG, location of such a system is finally independent of the gas network. LNG is very important for further development of this industry, I mean cogeneration, because very often we encounter a situation in the market that building such a cogeneration installation is difficult because either a lack of access to a gas network, or even if there is a gas network available, there is not enough capacity to provide gas for such an installation, and because of this, entrepreneurs have to give up their plans of using such an installation. And we must keep in mind that in the time of the energy crisis and problems with energy industry, when renewable energy sources are not able to provide a stable energy supply, cogeneration could be very instrumental in resolving this problem. And in the context of what was mentioned during the previous session, development of bio LNG can make this electricity and heat generated from renewable sources. So now we have very simple example how LNG could become a very simple bridge to solutions that will be able as 100% green solutions when they run on the right fuel. This is especially important in the context of the current legal regulations designed to support development of cogeneration. Since the previous year, we have a state system of supporting cogeneration. So this is based on the bonus principle, I mean special subsidies for development of cogeneration installation. I'm not going to elaborate on this, so just to cut the long story short, depending on the condition of installation, whether it's brand new or already existing, we have a guaranteed bonus, cogeneration bonus, or upgrading bonus. So in the context of our product, smart gas, and in the context of using the biogas, the guaranteed bonus is most important because it's dedicated for the smallest installations. The cogeneration bonus and the individual cogeneration bonus is designed for larger installations. So for LNG gas used as a fuel for cogeneration purposes, we may cover small installations of a power up to 1 megawatts to get this warranted bonus. And what's important, in case of those installations, we have a simple path of obtaining the bonus, and also conditions for getting the subsidies is also simple. For the smallest installations, they don't need to have to be hooked up to the public heating or electric network. So a company can use all energy for its own needs, both heat and electric power, and it still will be obtaining subsidies for every single kilowatt hours of electricity. So this is able to provide big economic benefits for a company. And we need to keep in mind that when bio-LNG could be used for these installations, so they could be considered as the ones generating energy from renewable sources. In 2020, this guaranteed bonus is 140 zlotys per megawatt hours, and seems that this cogeneration will be becoming more and more popular. However, keeping in mind that recently the energy minister made a decision that cogeneration bonus is paid from the zero level, we need to wait until some critical mass is gathered for the project in this area. So there is enough money in the system to support such project, but there must be some more projects. So this could be very significantly effect basing on a feedback to increase demand for LNG as a fuel for this kind of installations. And based on these governmental plans for the number of cogeneration units planned to be supported, that were calculated based on regulations in the law, I tried to estimate the size of the LNG market as a fuel for small cogeneration installations. So we conducted these calculations for the Polish LNG platform as a member of this platform. So to mention about methodology of this research, I mean the base data plant capacities were taken from the assessment of the result of the regulations, and I assume two ways of development of this installation. In the first option, pessimistic one, I assume that there will be 10% of all installations running on LNG. In the optimistic variant, I assume 30% will be running on LNG. So 30% would be a very optimistic vision of the development of this market in terms of providing energy from LNG. And even from this pessimistic variant in 2026, the volume of LNG will be 50,000 tons for these installations to run of this. And it's enough to mention that in the National Regulatory Office for Power Industry, in information about the gas market, the volume of LNG that was sold in liquefied form from the Świnoujście LNG terminal in 2019, this volume amounted to a little bit more than 45.5 thousand tons. So please remember that if this market is growing according to the optimistic variant, then you could see that actually this could double the volume of LNG used in Poland today and currently delivered from the Świnoujście gas terminal. And of course, with use of our dedicated solutions, this scenario will be closer to the optimistic rather than pessimistic variant. And certainly, we believe that cogeneration will play an important role in development of LNG market in Poland, and the LNG market could in turn play a very important role in development of cogeneration. You saw this slide before, so coming back to this smart gas, you could see that cogeneration is marked with much larger fonts. So we may say that it seems that cogeneration could be one of the most important applications of our smart gas concept, that it could contribute to development of the whole industry. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite you for cooperation. I would be more than happy to provide any additional information. Thank you very much, sir, for your very interesting information about the prospect of development of the LNG market. Please stay with us. We will meet again in a discussion panel in a moment. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Mariusz Kobe, the president of the Best Systemy Grzewcze company, who will describe the process of LNG regasification as a source of the coldness. Subject of my presentation will be cold energy obtained from the process of LNG regasification. I hope that our presentation will extend your knowledge about this. The Best Systemy Grzewcze company consists of several divisions. Engineering deals with design, delivery, assembly, servicing and delivery of fuels to all installation industries. This is the oldest part of our company. Cryogenics, the regasification station. Although you could see some ice on this slide, these installations are environment friendly. We've been cooperating with Polish natural gas company Science. Within this division we develop the technologies of detecting methane with laser, and we develop also new technologies of welding. Due to safety reasons, we have invested in very advanced solutions, and production of our products is very advanced and safe. Space. In this area we are testing an air platform that will allow us to detect steel pipelines buried underground, and we are going to detect any gas leakage from those pipelines, from air. Cryogenics, I mean the subject of my today's presentation. Let's come back to the regasification station. Here we see our first cryogenic heat exchanger that we used to learn about behavior of the media, and based on this heat exchanger we developed another heat exchanger, and it's covered by a patent application. So this is the exchanger that was used in our research to be tested by means of a thermal camera to trace behavior of its parts. And each time I see an evaporator, I wonder whether this energy that should be delivered to gas to liquefy it, whether such an energy should be changed. And we have found a solution. And this installation is supporting a cooling installation operated by our customer. Now a scheme of installation that is already operating. Those who are interested know this. Let me present the whole system. First, the liquefied LNG is delivered to a liquefaction station. Then it's sent to a coiling of a heat exchanger to be regasificated, and then it's delivered to the customer. Our installation is equipped with a heat exchanger that provide the cold energy. It's filled with glycol, and this cooled down glycol could be used to support operation of a cooling installation in an industry plant. Today we also work on recovery of cold using other media than glycol. Here we can see our heat exchanger. During the test you could see some ice, but this was done on purpose. This exchanger passed successfully all the tests, and it was made available to all possible customers. Our graph here shows how much energy could be obtained from liquefied energy. And there is no doubt that LNG is the best source of coldness. And we are going to focus on this. However, we work also on liquefied hydrogen. And I'd like to invite you to visit our website. On this website, in addition to an extension of my presentation, you could see a lot of information about our offer, and also you can open the cryogenics and some latest news bookmarks. Now I'd like to present you very briefly an exemplary analysis of cold recovery, I mean economic effect. We assume here 2 million cubic meters a year, and the price of electric energy 350 zlotys per megawatt hour, and the predicted or assumed increase of the price of electricity, the time of operation, and let's calculate 2 million cubic meters a year gives us 1,434 tons, and we may obtain from this nearly 300 megawatt hours. And of course we may obtain also a subsidy for the white certificate, of course after presenting our results for approval by the right authorities, and in 5 years we may save this way about 190,000 zlotys for 5 years. In our regasification stations we install only brand equipment, and safety is our priority. If due to any reasons there is a break in recovery of cold or problems with circulation of glycol, automatic pneumatic valves are switched, and we just keep the process going so customer doesn't see any problems, and the system inform the operators about any irregularities. We were pleasantly surprised to be aware that with special price for our heat exchanger at the Warsaw Fairs. Now let's talk about our science division. Talking about research, the best systemic Rzewczak company has implemented the quality management system, and it's continuously testing and developing welding technologies. Here you can see orbital welding of elements of a coiling of heat exchanger, and we take samples of the welds to make a cross section and to check it. One of our devices that we are still developing is a methane detection system based on a laser. Currently, in cooperation with a scientific institute, this system is being configured for operation in the field at the regasification station. It's continuously monitor the space over the whole regasification station, and if methane leak is detected, it alarms the operators.
Hydrogen Technologies Cluster and the Polish LNG platform. As the organizer of this meeting, I would like to thank you for a possibility to speak here. Thank you for attention. Please liaise with us. Telephone and address are given on the website of systemicrzewcze.pl. Thank you for attention. A very interesting presentation. LNG is not only cogeneration of energy, but it's also trigeneration. Very interesting presentation. Thank you for it. I would like to welcome our next speaker, Mr. Maciej Marusiak, senior consultant from Emerson, member of the Polish LNG platform, who will present methodological issues of LNG, metrological LNG installations. Good afternoon, Maciej Maroszewski. Can you hear us, Maciej? Hello, Jacek. Welcome cordially. At the beginning, Emerson Company, a large global concern, the LNG part is part of our industry. We deliver measuring equipment, controlling equipment for gas industry, including LNG. It's part of our company. I, in this company, deal mainly with measurements of flow, mainly solutions, fiscal solutions. I would like to tell you about the problems, but also solutions relating to legal meteorological control of LNG, CLNG installations. I will also mention hydrogen, about EML, about our Polish regulations. So what I would like to discuss, OEML, these are metrological requirements, global requirements relating to various types of installations for gas, for distributors, and the mid-directive of the European Union citing requirements for equipment, measuring equipment, billing measuring equipment, flow meters, gas meters, and our Polish rules and regulations internally in Poland. When we speak of EML, OEML, an international organization dealing with legal metrology, issuing recommendations for various types of measuring devices, and here we have recommendation 117, liquids other than water. In this case, LNG is a liquid other than water, and in 2019 they issued latest recommendations relating to actually LNG. R137 are gas meters, so in the evaporated form it's for gas meters, and R139 relating to distributors for high pressure gases, so CNG, and also at present also for hydrogen, H2. In the recommendations dated 2019, previous ones were dated 2014, we read that LNG is not a cryogenic liquid, cryogenic network liquid, but which was excluded from such liquids like liquefied nitrogen. There is a separate point for LNG, and LNG class measurement class up from 2.5% to 1.5%. So all trucks, if the measuring authority approves it, the measuring class of will be 1.5, so with accuracy of 1.5%. This was introduced by OIML R117, technical gases, all in the different recommendation number 81. So the future is that LNG will be measured with accuracy 0.5, not 2.5 as was to date. OIML also recommends that all equipment for handling trucks where there is a return to gas phase, the gas phase also has to be measured. So like in case of trucks like Iveco, which represent, if we tank a truck, we collect vapors, it has to be measured. So we have two flow meters, then gas mass to the truck, to the tanker on the back, but vapor comes back to the installation in kilograms. They should be measured. We are sure that the driver who receives the gas is not cheated. He got 500 kilograms of gas, 20 kilos return, so the driver pays for 480. So OIML recommends where to use two measurements on gas phase and liquid phase. Another example are gas meters. So on this gasification stations, when we have a measurement of volatile gas, there is a different item on OIML for gas meters. So billing can be either in meters or kilograms. We have approved installations, which I approved, where we have mass billing gas meters. 139 gas distributors. There is a separate recommendation for high pressure gases and for tanking vehicles. This recommendation includes CNG distributors and also for liquid hydrogen. In this recommendation, you have the requirements for the distributor and the shape of such an installation. Here we have the directive, MID. These were global recommendations, and my directive shows us the situation in the EU. The directive was introduced to unify law and requirements and facilitate for producers to introduce measuring equipment on European markets. The main directive relates to 10 types of equipment. We have water meters, gas meters, heat measurement, liquids other than water, waste, and taxometers. Even beer glasses have to be measured according to specific regulations, and equipment for measuring emissions, it's all under MID. What are we paying for taxes is under MED. So there is no distribution for CNG. There is also only a gas meter, 137, but a CNG distributor or H2 distributor is not under MID. How we introduce such an institution? The producer has a system certificate, then either we introduce a notified entity which approves the installation, the F module, or the producer has officers who are authorized by notified entities, and such a producer representative may approve such an installation. I have, for example, a permit to approve installations for gas meters according to G module, where we build an installation and approve types of installations for liquids other than water. We have on pipelines, we have bunkering of ships, loading of ships, tank loading, installations on tanks, liquid distributors. Everything is included in installations for liquids other than water. The legal unit is kilogram or liter, depending on the liquid that we are measuring. So we are building a system. You have to ensure certain requirements to be met so that the officer approves the measuring system. This is a number of combined items of equipment. We have various types of systems. We have systems on pipelines, 0.3 system. We have systems for 0.5 high pressure and mid divides liquids into accuracy of installation for cryogenic liquid, 1.5% for monoxide, and for cryogenic liquids. There is inconsistency between OML and MID. MID was issued in 2016. OML with recommendations is dated back to 2019. Maybe there will be an exchange, and formally large LNG installations will be measured with accuracy up to 1.5%. Minimum requirements for such MMID installations is type of installation, be it an pipeline or loading, and you select the right flow, 2 liters with tank or maybe 20 kilograms, types of we match to the technology. So if we are at low temperature, we have admission for low temperature, or for high temperature we have to prevent bubbles of gas in the measuring equipment because it falsifies the measurement. We have to determine the owner change point, and also in optional we have to have pouring controls that controls the whole pouring process. If we have ethanol, we can calculate for reference temperatures. Printers also have to be using equipment and selecting the whole system with what accuracy we expect that will be dispensing the product. This is the example of a certificate, mid certificate for a system. This is a system on a cistern where we can see type of the system, components used in the system, the diagram of the installation, and in the picture you can see the installation on the system, on car system. When it comes to gas meters, it's Annex 2 this time. Annex 2 speaks of 2 types of equipment, gas meters and gas converters. Gas meters can measure either in mass or in volume units. The approval is for E+D module, and the approval is by the officer, the certificate and approval by the measurement authority. And we speak of a gas meter, but it's only for fuel gases, for energy carrying gases. We cannot do it for argon, for nitrogen or hydrogen, as long as hydrogen is used for technical purposes. If it's used as a fuel gas, such hydrogen such hydrogen installation can be accepted by bid. Here we have an example of such a certificate where you have a list of devices and admission ranges, pressures, flow ranges, etc. But what next after the introduction of MID? Because MID speaks of introduction of a market, installation to the market. We already have our local law where we have the measuring authority, a local officer who has to conduct on an annual basis a legal control metrological audit. And here we have the journals of laws, and in the journal of law it says that MID did not specify upper limits relating to the streams. Unfortunately, our Polish law determines that if the installation is to be a billing one, and we want to again approve it, when it comes to gas meters, it can only be up to 0.5 bars, and the stream cannot be bigger than 100 cubic meters per hour. So if there are big flows or pressures, officers will not go about approval of such equipment. And when it comes to liquids other than water, we have cryogenic liquid, 600 liters per minute. But given that OML says that LNG is not a cryogenic technical liquid like nitrogen or argon, so we can speak of upper range up to 6,000 liters per minute. So when building an installation for ship bunkering, we can build an installation with capacity of 6,000 liters per minute. You can later legalize it with some template. The legalization points are master meter equipment, the recommendation of the Minister of the Economy that says that for cryogenic liquids there is a control reference, a comparative measure that has up to 600 liters per minute, and confidence has to be 3 times better than the audited measurement installation. So if we have an installation for 1.5%, the installation, a reference equipment that checks a given installation has to be 3 times better. So we have the measurement unit has to be class 0.5, and on the installation even 3 times better. Let's check the next slide. And here such references are the so-called POGC labs. POGC has 3 such equipment items, one for measuring cryogenic tanks, another big dragon to check the installation of technical gases, nitrogen, argon or oxygen. Those installations have metrological permits of the main authority, and with these installations POGC provides calibration services during checking the installation before it's admitted to the market. Here such a dragon in action, it's calibration of a tank. We are pushing gas through this dragon from one installation to another. There are recommendations that everything is okay, and if we have the right values, you don't, if there is adjustment needed, adjustment on the cistern is done, and again you have to check. This is an interesting piece of equipment, a smaller dragon owned also by POGC laboratory. It's an equipment which is unique across the globe because it has 2 measuring units, one for liquid phase and one for gas phase. So if we have a distributor equipped, and there's such in Poland, and we have a Polish producer who produces such distributors equipped with two measuring items for gas phase. We can check and calibrate such measuring equipment in accordance with regulation. So this is an example in a bus terminal in Poland.
I'd like to show the certificates for these two dragons, and this is one smaller one for calibration of the fuel distributors. I'd like also to mention about verification of CNG filling pumps, because according to Polish law, we there is no mention about this. However, there are some CNG pumps in Poland, and their number is growing. So the question is whether the 1 kilogram of this compressed natural gas is really distributed as 1 kilogram. And the Ministry of Economy, I don't remember the current name of them, they haven't developed regulation about the relevant calibration of such a fuel pump for CNG. And in Western countries or in the USA, there are some standards built based on the Coriolis dynamometer to calibrate such an installation. And the legal requirements don't mention about errors in operation of the installation, but rather it says that it must be plus minus 0.5%, and for LNG in the future it will be 1.5% allowable, and for CNG it's up to 1% accuracy. And we can carry out a calibration to use such a calibration to check what's the error of measurement. And an owner of such a pump may invite an official from the main measuring office to ask about calibration of his distributing pumps, to know what's the measurement error. But this will not be a calibration certificate. Here you can see an example of a check of such a pump for CNG. There is a flow meter in this suitcase. So to sum it up, we may use the Coriolis dynamometer to calibrate pumps for both liquids and gases. We have flow meters running, for example, on liquid hydrogen. It means that it has some minus 250 degrees centigrade. Everything is in agreement with OIML 116, now talking about the flow capacity, 600 liters per minute. We can say that these are not cryogenic installations running on liquid other than water, because for cryogenic liquids, the temperature of the liquid must be below minus 153 degrees, and for LNG it's sometimes minus 140. So we are talking also about measuring the returning gas phase. And we expect introduction of legal regulations for calibration of CNG and hydrogen fuel pumps. I'm not a specialist on taxation. However, if we buy something, there must be clearly stated what regulations are used for clearance and how to check this distribution pump. Thank you very much for attention, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. That's my contact data. Thank you very much. Please keep on asking questions both during the presentation and during the discussion panels. I will try to present your questions to the participants of our panels. Maciek, I have two questions from Mr. Rafał Wejherski. Should the only LNG flow be measured, and should we also check what's the returning phase of LNG using a chromatograph? Well, this is a question about the scale. If you have a road tanker, or if we are to fill a vehicle with fuel, so the flow is about 100 liters per minute. So it would be not enough to perform chromatographic analysis, so this is not applicable. Of course, we can use a chromatograph for refueling a vehicle, but this would be very expensive. However, for bunkering, when the flows are much larger, it's recommended to let us know what we got and what we should pay for. And we know what's the composition of the gas used for bunkering. It has been checked before. So the basis is metering of the return to know exactly how much of the gas returned, not to pay too much. We had a conversation about this because one of Iveco customers mentioned that I don't know how much of this is returning, so I need to know how much gas was pumped into my tanks. We are talking about 20 kilos, but if we have 20 trucks and 20 kilograms per 50 trucks, so the total amount is becoming quite large. I'm sorry, we are behind the schedule. Can we speed up? Now I'd like to invite you for a discussion panel during which we'll be talking about legislation issues related to popularization of LNG in Poland. I'd like to ask first of all Mr. Lech Wojciechowski, given both the existing and future size of the LNG market, you mentioned about the volume of gas that could be used for cogeneration purposes. What are the legislative hurdles today preventing further growth of LNG? So LNG regasification installation up to 10 cubic meters per hour doesn't require...
Tak, dziękuję bardzo za to pytanie. To już właściwie...
Thank you very much for your question. This was already discussed during the first discussion panel, where the representative of the Stocznia Remontowa mentioned about building the regasification and vehicle refueling station, and the main hurdle, sorry, there are very big volume changes. I cannot work like this. So the administrative procedure required to establish such a filling station are much shorter The all administrative process for such a station, refueling station, is about 1 year, and it could be even only 9 months. It depends on the size of the tank, big or small. And the main problems are administrative issues. 80% of the time is waiting for obtaining administrative decision, and this is the main hurdle. Customers would like to obtain gas as soon as possible, and we, depending on the size of the tank, we have to wait mainly for the environmental impact assessment. Actually, pressure in LNG tanks is quite low. However, it's assumed that they have big impact on environment. So no matter whether this is a very small or very big LNG tanks, we need to obtain the analysis of environmental impact, and sometimes it's enough to obtain such a decision based upon the information data sheet of the project, but sometimes we need to obtain full environmental impact report, and such a report, the whole procedure prolongs the whole investment procedure by some 4 to 5 months. If there is necessary to obtain the environmental impact reports, this time is getting even longer. In our opinion, the largest legislation problem is that no matter what's the size of the tanker, the environmental impact decision is always required. And not necessarily for 10 meters it's required to get a construction permit. However, what is required is the environmental impact decision. So it's good that small tanks up to 10 cubic meters don't require obtaining construction permit, but we need to wait for the environmental impact decision. So our request that we have presented also as the member of the Polish LNG platform is to exclude small tanks from the necessity of obtaining the environmental impact decision, because this will shorten very significantly the time to obtain the final decision. So that's the main problem in our opinion. I'd like to touch the issue of the state assistance in getting into LNG business, because in January this year we have a project with some resources allowing for increasing the fleet of vehicles. However, now what's missing is some centralized support, and because of this, many projects that were waiting for this additional financing were stopped, and this problem can a little bit slow down the growth of this station, of the development of stations of LNG refueling. And another issue that's important for this is the German factor. What's happening in Germany is just an exclusion of the road tax for vehicles running or LNG, and this results in a very big growth of interest in using of this kind of fuel for motor vehicles. From our point of view, we may wait for a proposal for copying this solution, for example, stopping, taking the via toll, let's say, tax for road usage. And we also may expect some reduction in price of LNG. It seems that just 0.18 zloty per liter is not much lower price. However, it's important. To sum up what you were talking about, we should follow the German example to exempt from the toll fees vehicles running or LNG. And I know from the list of legislation efforts of the government, I know that the government has been working on this, and the applicator mentioned that this could be one of elements of improving the situation in European road transport market, and also this additional fees added to the price of LNG. I'd like to ask Mr. Piotr, the president of the Ecotrans company that has the Apple LNG brand and is operating an LNG refueling station. Mr. President, from your perspective, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the president of the board of the Ecotrans Logistic, and this is a typically transport and logistic company that operates several dozens of trucks. We've been one of the first companies, and as early as in 2018, we've placed an order to the Iveco company for 18 trucks running or LNG, and this cooperation has been developing, and today about 10% of Polish fleet of vehicles is running of this gas. I couldn't agree more with what my predecessors said about this environmental impact opinion about problems, because I know this from my practice, because usually this is the case in the very beginning when there are some new project implemented. Presidents and directors were much involved in this, and I was much involved in development of the Krzywa LNG refueling station at A4 expressway. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a real horror to get all formal permits. It took many months. When the refueling station was put in operation, then we had problems with the National Office of Power Industry Regulation to get necessary licenses. So that's the problem. Probably some promises for licenses could be obtained, but they said that's possible, but how can I get such a promise if I need to present parameters of the meters and all the technical data for refueling station? This is one of the hurdles on the way to develop new stations. I couldn't agree more with what was said about the fuel charge, 157 zlotys per 1 ton of LNG. Well, we are glad that the government removed the excise tax on LNG, but it would be good also to remove this additional charge. Perhaps this could be a task for the Polish LNG platform. We need some more advertising to convince drivers that they are not driving a bomb, that this is completely safe fuel. I encountered a lot of problems to convince drivers that they are not driving on a bomb on wheels. So some more information on this would be needed. And as it was mentioned before, this is even safer than ON. Peter, you said 1,410 vehicles in Europe. In Poland, there were 600 vehicles, and year today Iveco 66, Scania 88. In total, there is nearly 700, 400 trucks, and talking about the national strategy of developing of alternative fuels, we need to have at least 3,000 of such vehicles quite soon. So what are necessary conditions for a further growth of this market in terms of vehicles running on LNG? Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to express thanks to my predecessor, Mr. Peter, because it's always interesting to hear from the practical side how this transport look like. I agree with what Peter said, that we need to promote this solution. This solution is not very popular in the transportation world. We need to convince the driver, and we are doing our best to do this. We developed instructing films, and we'd like to convince the drivers that there is no reason to be afraid of liquid natural gas. And we train the drivers, we train them in operation of trucks running on LNG. Talking about further growth of the market, of course, this market is growing a little bit slower in Poland than in other European countries. Sorry to interrupt you, but my understanding is that there should be the transportation technical supervision service to supervise the pressure tanks of LNG fuel installed in trucks. They must be, these tanks should be registered as the pressure vessels, but this is not the case in Western countries. Yes, you're very right. We'd like to follow the European solution, because if a truck is, let's say, licensed and certified as a complete product, there is no need to certify additionally its fuel tanks. Of course, there should be some inspections on the current basis. There is no doubt about this, but in order to put these vehicles in operation as soon as possible, the process of supervision of LNG tanks in trucks should be very much simplified. Yes, Peter, but I recorded what other hurdles in development for the further growth of the LNG market. There is no possibility to refuel such a fuel running on LNG on our own. However, it is required that there must be a dedicated personnel that's properly trained to operate the LNG pump to refuel LNG fuel tanks in trucks. So this is another hindrance, and certainly you're right. But the main problem is infrastructure. If we see some LNG refueling stations, usually they have some limited hours of operation, and practically in other European countries it is possible to refuel your vehicles with LNG on your own. In my personal assessment, this will happen finally, but we need to have these self-service refueling LNG stations, and then every driver will be allowed to refuel his or her vehicles on his own. I'm waiting for the questions all the time. I see some discussion on our chat box about LNG-driven buses, and we have several hundred of Solbus LNG-driven gas, and now we saw a tender for Autosan LNG-driven buses, and their LNG installation will be provided by the solar. And ladies and gentlemen, anything else? What else would be needed? If not, I'd like each of us to wrap it up within 1 minute. What should be done in terms of legislation modifications? I'd like to touch one more issue that I encountered listening to Mr. Maciej Skowroński. It was mentioned that there are some monies from the European funds for development of the gas infrastructure. This money has been suspended because the fund was eliminated. However, if the money was theoretically available, I'd like to turn your attention to one more thing. The criteria that were presented for obtaining of these subsidies were designed in such a way that actually it was impossible, or the chance of success was very low for entities that will start to build a network of dozen or so refueling stations. So it was more designed for LNG than LNG. So I believe that this way of thinking of the ministry officials is not so much focused on LNG, but rather classical gas. So they think more about CNG than LNG stations. So perhaps if this money will become available again, this would be very much welcome. If I'd like to sum up what was said in terms of legislation problems, I see the top problem that was reflected in what was said by every panelist is that there is no cohesive approach, single approach to implementation of the LNG related regulations in terms of calibration of LNG tanks, in terms of the environmental impact decisions, the state technical supervision service issues. So some unification of this would be very much welcome. Thank you very much, Doctor, for your opinion.
I tackled the issue that was tackled by Peter. I 100% agree. Having contact with transport industry clients, as long as the owner wants to migrate because he can see the benefit, but the problem appears at the very bottom. Either the gas is difficult, or there are a million reasons for which suddenly the drivers don't want to drive the trucks. And I agree that maybe perhaps we all should focus on grassroots and also intermediate fuel, because we agree that it's a step on the way to Green Europe. We need to focus on the promotion of this fuel. It's a small summary from our side. Thank you very much for this summary. Peter, I would like to address to Peter from EcoTransport a brief summary because we are strapped for time. This summary could last longer. You had an opportunity to speak during presentation, but you will have some more time to tell us more. But about legislative issues, in order to interest those municipalities to give rebates on the tax on transport vehicles, annual inspections of tanks, it's also 1,000 zlotys, about 1,000 zlotys every year. In no European country you have it, only we had introduced it. Piotr Werner talked about introduction of new vehicle. I already had to conduct tests, annual tests. What the hell? It's not only about 800 zlotys, also the fact that a given official has to come when you have 3 vehicles. They don't want to inspect a single vehicle. So you can imagine we have a few gas run vehicles, and now I have to stop one and they have to remain motionless until the second and third come, and then the authority officer comes. So we should skip those inspections. Now we are proceeding with the law about the change to those regulations. There will be coming every 48 months, so we are coming to a good direction. And Piotr Werner, the last words. I will only add to what Piotr said, that of course this is time. You have to withdraw those vehicles for the period of inspections, and it's also costs which we cannot see at first glance, but they still matter. And I agree with my predecessors, we should strive to make more efficient all those procedures when it comes to trucks, and also streamline procedures of admitting vehicles to traffic, because without that, LNG run trucks will not appear on Polish roads in the scale we want to see. And we want to press on development of this sector of transport in Poland. Thank you to panelists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see Mr. Piotr Zimek in the session number 3, where he talked about economy and ecology.